What's up, fight fans? I'm Andre Wynn. Welcome back for another episode of MMA 101, a series where we dive in depth into various combat sports topics using data, science, and personal anecdotes. Today's topic comes from one of my good friends, Andrew Kassir. He asked, what's the best MMA gym in the world? And this is a topic that's been floating around other message boards, Facebook groups, and Instagram pages, and I think it's a very valid question. So we're going to see if we could use data and a more scientific approach to prove what is the best MMA gym in the world. Let's get started. If you do a quick Google search, you'll find a million articles that are all ranking the different MMA gyms. And a lot of them, they use more personal opinion. Now, they're very well grounded. A lot of the rankings of the gyms are going to be pretty similar across all of the different articles. But again, it's really opinion based. Sometimes they'll use like number of champions in the UFC, but they're really not using a whole lot of data. So I decided to use a different approach to see if we can rank the various MMA gyms. I created a list of the 1,085 fighters in the three biggest MMA organizations. Those are Bellator, and the UFC. I pulled in the gyms that they train at, the organizations that they're in, the countries they're from, their win and loss percentages, their types of finishes, all of that data to see if we could create some metrics to evaluate which gyms are truly the best. Those metrics are total number of professional fighters. So this metric, obviously, the more fighters you have doesn't necessarily mean you're the better gym, but I think it does say something, especially when you're a pro fighter and you're thinking of where to train. The more other pro fighters that are in your gym, the more training options you have during camp. The second metric is gym win percentage. So I summed up all the wins and losses from every fighter that trains at that gym to create an overall win percentage. And obviously, this shows how good your gym is at winning. So the better of a gym you are, we should think that all of their fighters should have a higher win percentage when summed together. The third metric is the number of champions. So I included champions from Bellator, but I weighted UFC just slightly higher. The reason being, the UFC really is the premier organization, so I weight their champs a little bit better than and Bellator. And you could argue against this. I'm sure Bellator and FC would claim that their champions are better, or at the very least just as good. But I think everybody knows the UFC sort of is the gold standards when it comes to fighters. They have more competition. They tend to have better competition, just slightly. So that's why I weighted UFC champions more than the other champions from the other organizations. The other reason why I included champion in this metric is because it really does take a certain amount of skill as a coaching and training staff to be able to elevate a fighter from being very good to being the best in the world. Takes a lot of skill in preparation, so preparing up to the fight. How do we go through training camp to make sure that they peak at the right moment? But also, how do you make those adjustments in the fight when things maybe aren't going so well? How do I use that break to my advantage and help make those adjustments mid-fight? So for all those reasons, that is the third metric, is how many champions does that gym have? And the final metric is finishing rate. This includes both knockouts and submissions. The reason why I did this is I didn't want to weight one over the other. I think it takes a lot of technical skill to be consistent at both of them. And obviously, if you're knocking more people out, that gives you less chance to submit other people, and vice versa. If you're really good at submissions, maybe you're not always going for knockouts. But either way, it takes a lot of technical skill, especially to do this consistently. Yes, in MMA, there's a lot of ways to win, and sometimes guys just get lucky. Just one lucky punch happened to land on the chin and they knock their opponent out. But to be able to do it consistently is key here. And so this is a metric that takes all of the finishes for every single fight they had and finds out what is that percentage of the time that they're able to finish their opponent. After I gathered all of these metrics, what I did is I normalized them. So I put them on a scale from 0 to 1. That way it's consistent across all the metrics. And then I added them together to create one composite score. I then used this composite score to rank the gyms. So the higher the composite score, the better the gym is, and the lower the composite score, the worse the gym is. Now, this is all comparative. These are still the best gyms in the world. There's about 25 of them in this ranking. So even if you're the 25th best gym in the world, that's still saying something. It just means you're not as good necessarily as the number one gym, obviously. Now, the last thing to note is this data is only valid through the UFC Jacksonville event that happened in May 2020. Anything after that is not included in the data, and this data is going to change every single year. So in 2021, these rankings may no longer be valid, but as of right now, these rankings are accurate and they use the most up-to-date data. Now, before we dive into the ranking of the top 5 gyms in MMA, there is something interesting that I found. I don't want to spend too much time on any one metric, but what we can see if we look at the number of fighters based on gym and organization, we can see that some of the gyms are feeder programs for particular organizations. If we look at the data, American Top Team has the most fighters in all 3 organizations with 44 and 35 fighters in the UFC. But you can see that there are other gyms that are also feeder programs for other organizations. Let's take Straight Blast Gym Ireland, for instance. They have the second most amount of fighters, but they feed mostly Bellator. You have a few other gyms that also feed ONE FC, and those gyms are Bali MMA, Lake MMA, and Evolve MMA, which makes sense because ONE FC is headquartered in Singapore. A lot of these gyms are located in Asia. If you're a fighter, you probably shouldn't make your training decision just based solely off this information, but if you want to find a gym with particular ties to an organization, let's say you're really dead set on fighting in ONE FC or in the UFC, you can choose your gym. If you want to fight in ONE FC, maybe you choose Evolve MMA and you relocate down to Singapore or down to Asia. Or if you're really interested on being a UFC fighter, maybe you take a deeper look at American Top Team, for instance. Now again, you shouldn't make your training decision just solely off this information, but I do find it really interesting. Anyways, that's not what you're here for. I know you're here for the top 5 MMA gyms, so here's the rankings. Here's gym number 5, Evolve MMA. Evolve MMA is one of 2 gyms in the top 5 that is not based in North America. They've been ranked by many publications as the best gym in all of Asia, and it's easy to see why. Across all their gyms, they offer over 800 classes a week, ranging from beginner all the way to advanced and pro level classes. Out of this list, they have the 7th most fighters, the 4th most champions, the highest submission rate, and the 8th highest finishing rate overall. So, if you live in Asia, this should definitely be your go-to gym. One last cool note is that if you're vacationing in Singapore for a week, you can actually sign up for their vacation package. They'll allow you to attend classes depending on your skill level again, so you could be beginner, intermediate, advanced, or possibly even train with the pros, though I think there's a little bit of a process to be able to attend those pro classes. But still, this is something that's pretty cool that they offer, and then they'll also allow you to meet everybody, the training staff, everybody that works out there, and they'll show you around the beach, show you around town. So if you're ever in Singapore, I highly suggest that you check out Evolve MMA. Number 4, American Kickboxing Academy. I was actually surprised that this gym was only ranked 4th. This is the home of Khabib Nurmagomedov and Daniel Cormier, and honestly, had Daniel Cormier still been champion, at least in one of the weight classes, if not both, this gym probably would have been higher. This gym has the 5th most pro fighters in all the major organizations, the 7th highest win percentage, the 5th most champions, and the 18th highest finishing rate of all gyms. This gym is headquartered in Northern California, so if you're ever in the Bay Area, you should give it a look, try to stop by. The number 3 gym on this list, City Kickboxing. This was MMA Junkie's Gym of the Year in 2019, and they keep getting better. This gym may not be as large or flashy as some of the other gyms on this list, but they've definitely earned their ranking. This gym is located in Auckland, New Zealand, and it only has a 4,500 square foot facility, which, as you'll see when we get to some of the other gyms, is pretty small actually compared to a lot of the other training facilities. However, they have the 5th highest win percentage with an 82% win percentage across all of their fighters. As of right now, they're the only gym with 2 UFC champions. That includes Israel Adesanya and Alexander Volkanovski. And they have the 3rd highest overall finishing rate, being 2nd in knockouts. Honestly, if it weren't for this gym's size, they would definitely be ranked higher and possibly even number 1 overall on this list. We're starting to see a new wave of international MMA fighters, and City Kickboxing is ushering in that new generation. Number 2, American Top Team. I told you earlier that American Top Team has the most fighters on this list, and that definitely helps put them at number 2. But the size of their gym isn't the only reason why they're ranked so high. American Top Team has the second most amount of champions, with Adriana Moraes in ONE FC and Amanda Nunes in the UFC. They're ranked only 14th in overall win percentage at 76.8%, and 20th in overall finishing rate, only finishing 50% of their opponents. In my opinion, it becomes a lot harder to have a higher win percentage and finishing rate just given the sheer size of their gym. But still, the fact that they're able to be ranked number 2, even with those detriments, given the size of their gym, is incredible. ATT started in Florida, but they've since branched out and they now have gyms all over the US. So if you're ever in one of the cities with one of their gyms, you should definitely check them out. Now, finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the number 1 gym is Hard Knocks 365. In the past, you may have heard of the Black Zillions. This was a formidable gym located in Boca Raton, and the Black Zillions were home to a lot of former UFC champions, including Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, Eddie Alvarez, but a lot of the Black Zillions have now moved since that gym has dissolved, and they have gone over to Hard Knocks 365. This is probably the most advanced training facility on our list. Hard Knocks 365 has a 30,000 square foot training facility. And on top of training pro fighters, they also train a lot of up and coming or professional basketball and soccer players. Now, if we dive into their statistics, they have the 4th most professional fighters on this list. They have the most champions with 3, 1 in the UFC in Kamaru Usman and 2 in ONE FC. They're ranked 17th in submission percentage, but they're ranked 7th overall in knockout percentage. Honestly, what's not to love about this gym? They have world-class training in Jiu-Jitsu, striking, and overall athleticism, given that they train in multiple sports. Not only that, but they're located right on the beach. So, without a doubt, Hard Knocks 365 is the number 1 MMA gym in the world. Do you agree with these rankings? If you're interested in a more complete list, you can find it in the video description down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you're looking for more general sports content, you can find my friends and I's other channel at The Slump Buster. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and of course YouTube. But if MMA and combat sports is more of your thing, stay tuned. I've got plenty of great videos coming for you. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.